Hello, guys. I'm Young Lion. Welcome to episode 2 of my podcast here on BMAT Radio. This podcast covers Foxhole related game changes, and today we're going to be talking about the update 27 from blog post or the dev blog number 69, which is different from the blog post. I think they did 66 was the blog post, but the dev blog that they release on YouTube is number 69, which covers update 27 as well as future updates for the summer and I think August through September release. All right, let's go ahead and hop right on into it. And the first topic of today, we're going to talk about one of the changes they were mentioning came from Mark. It was of the resource containers, and pretty much they were talking about a better way to gather, store, and transport the raw materials. You see, the shipping containers are great, but what they were saying was that the code implemented was sort of last minute and it was kind of janky. They wanted something that fit a little better and was actually created specifically for the raw resources to be then transported to the refinery. And that's the import side of Logi. So Import Logi is going to be seeing some love with the new resource containers. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm thinking it's probably going to work along with the flatbed containers. And, work similar to with the crane dropping of the shipping container, but instead of a shipping container, you have a resource container. Something like that is what I'm guessing will happen. They didn't give too much resources. They didn't give too much information on it, but that's just a guess as what he was talking about. Later on, Mark was talking about map posts. Now, here's a very important thing. The map posts, he put some emphasis on this, and they showed in the it wasn't the dev blog, it was the dev post where they were talking about this map posting system. It looks a lot like Reddit. If you guys go on Reddit, I go on Reddit a lot. They're talking about a system where it, visually functions like Reddit, where you can post that this outpost or FOB needs certain materials, and then guys who are there who need those materials can post that, similar to how Reddit works. You can just click the little up arrow on it. So visually it's going to function like that, but we'll see how useful it is, because my honest opinion, whenever you implement a system like that, it encourages people to pretty much do nothing until the resource arrives. And that's what I'm afraid of. A lot of the frontline guys don't even know how to use a hammer. They immediately throw away their hammer. They don't want to build. They don't want to assist in any other area. They just stand around until more ammo shows up or until howitzer shells show up. And, this map posting system that they want to implement, to me, seems like it's going to encourage more of that, but we'll have to see how it actually works in game. I'm sure that I'm not going to use the word here. Well, I'll use it just to let you know. I'm sure that clans, and that's very important here, clans will be able to make great use of that, but as far as just random sort of up posting certain things and spamming posts all over the map, it'll be a little bit more organized, where players, and specifically Logi players, can see what's more important based on the up posts. So we're getting a new revitalized complaining system pretty much. Mark later on goes to talk about the game balancing. And this is very important. I like some of the game balancing things that they were talking about. First up on the list, we're talking about the armored cars. That's right. He was saying that they're 99% sure of this change. Armored cars will no longer require petrol. So I'm sure for all of our armored car driving friendlies out there that likes to zoom around and shoot stuff in the armored car, that's going to be wonderful. You'll be able to use diesel in that now, so it's going to be much more important during that early game. You're not going to have to struggle as much to get your hand on petrol. You can just get some diesel, fuel up, get your ammo, get out there and do your partisan activities. Next up, motorcycles. Mark also talked about how, many of the players have been saying motorcycles need some love. They're pretty much useless in the game as is. They don't really function as a war vehicle. Yeah, I can kind of see that. It's a fast vehicle that you can sort of sprint around and, just drive around really fast and run over friendlies with it. But other than that, it really didn't have much purpose in the game. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the devs do with the motorcycles. Maybe they might remove it until they can actually figure out a better purpose for it, which I think will be great. Especially if they bump down something like the light utility vehicle and allow us to access that in the place of motorcycles, where you may not need to, use RMATs to make it. I think that'll be a good change, but we'll see how that works out. Mark later on brings up light tanks. Here's a good one, especially for you partisans out there. The light tanks, they were talking about the cost is too high, meaning the amount of components needed to make light tanks. They're talking about doing something about changing that. Now, they didn't give any specifics like, reducing the costs or making it a little bit lower on the tech tree or anything of that nature. They didn't give any specifics, but they're saying that they're going to address that because, truthfully, why get the light tanks when the battle tanks are right there as well? You skip right over the light tanks and go straight to the battle tanks. The shell costs need about the same thing with the what's it called? Heavy explosive materials to make the shells for both the light tanks and the battle tanks. And with the battle tanks, you get much more flexibility and functionality. So light tanks is going to see some love. I'm very happy to hear that. Mark later on talks about howitzers and how howitzers are a great early game tool. But later on, when you come down to mid to late game, pretty much useless. You don't get any love with the howitzers at all. Because again, once battle tanks show up on the scene, imagine trying to hit a battle tank with a howitzer. Once the howitzer knows it's being targeted, once the battle tank knows it's being targeted by a howitzer user, they're just going to move. Meaning, imagine all that recalculating and everything is not applicable at all. So they're talking about doing something to balance howitzers for the late game, as well as not making it, super overpowered for the early game. Shell cost is very important in that, and the talk of the heavy explosive materials, HE mats. So hopefully we'll see some change in that, some more love with the reduction of costs in the shells. That'd be great. Keep battle tanks where they are. I like battle tanks being a late game item because they're super powerful, very scary on the battlefield, but howitzers need that love. I don't use howitzers much myself, but I understand how flexible they can be. And it's good to have them. Let's go ahead and move forward right on into RPGs. Mark talked about how RPGs need some balancing because they're pretty much like a light tank on foot as far as the explosive power that a player has when wielding an RPG. You do pretty much the same amount of damage as a light tank does. You're walking around with this RPG and you can pull it out of your shirt pocket and blow up something. Even a light tank. You won't blow it up with one hit, but you're doing the same damage, roughly the same damage as a light tank, but you're just on foot, meaning you don't need all the bunch of, the RMATs and everything for, you don't need as much RMATs for it. And the shells don't require the sulfur, so you don't need the HE mats. Meaning, again, why use light tanks at all? Because light tank shells require HE mats, but RPG shells don't. So, you really got to provide a nice balance there. And I understand that with those, three things, the howitzers, the RPGs, and the light tanks, trying to balance them to where they don't actually take away from the battle tank, but make them relevant in the early game, but not too powerful in the early game, and keep them relevant through the mid game. That's a very, very big struggle. And I'm interested in seeing how the developers are going to cover that. Like, how are they going to implement changes? They're saying that they're really looking at the forums, the Reddit forums, the Discord forums on the official Discord page for Foxhole. They're looking for player feedback. So I think it's very important that players give feedback. If you want to submit your feedback here, I'll be glad to accept that feedback and then go into the forums and, pretty much display a well-read discussion for how to implement changes, something that the developers can see and players can then upvote and downvote or give me pointers on how to word it. And, we can all work together, especially since they're listening. And here's where I'm very, very, well, you know what? I'm going to save this for later on. Let's just go down the list here. They're talking about nerfing, and I'm a little upset about this part. Gun turrets and gun nests. Now, I'm a little upset about that. Now, the reason they're talking about some sort of nerf, they didn't say nerf exactly. They say they want to address gun turrets and gun nests, but we all know what that means. They want to nerf them because defensive spam. I think it's a bad idea to nerf them. I really do. you shouldn't nerf them. I think that once we educate more of the player base on building technique and strategies for placement of these items, we can then regulate from our, from within the game. We don't need the developers to actually come in and change this, because I think what players don't understand is really how these defensive structures work to maximize their use. So in other words, instead of just putting one right on top of the other and a huge string of defenses that just waste a ton of material, I think that once players realize that these things actually shoot pretty far, they can cover a great, distance, and they learn a little bit more about structure engineering, that'll fix the problem by itself. More and more players being educated, boom, fixed, done. You'll have less of that. But right now, it is on the table, so we need to be careful. We don't want the developers nerfing everything, so I'm going to be working hard trying to get a video out on that. Let's go ahead and move right on down the line here. We got, this is so good. I am so happy this came up, because I've been on a warpath about this. I have been pounding the desk, just wringing my hands and screaming about this. Now, we're going to have to use the language. I'm going to call this language explicit. We're going to have to be very careful in how we word this, because we can tell that the developers want to move in their direction, but it's a certain word they don't want to use, and that word is clans. They don't want to say clans for some reason, and I'm fine with that, because they're coming out with player grouping tools. Very, very important. I'm super excited about this. Player grouping tools. At the moment, they're calling it the regiment system, and they're saying that name may change, but for now, that's just the code name giving for it in its development phase. Remember, this is an alpha game, so a lot of things can change. Right now, it's just front end support, meaning you'll get more of that visual representation, not really the other features like I discussed in my last podcast about upgrading a squad into a clan and then being able to clan lock things. That's more of a back end supportive measure. On the front end, you'll get more of the hierarchical organizations, as they've called it, meaning you'll be able to have a group leader, not a clan leader. Remember, we're going to do away with that word clan, because we want to encourage them to go forward with this. And if it takes throwing the word clan out the window, so be it. Screw it, throw the clan out the window. We're going to go with grouping here. We want a group leader or an official hierarchy system here, where you're going to have your leader of the group, followed by his subordinates, his main subordinates, and then everyone else that falls into the group. So remember, we're going to stick to that language, and we're going to work with it. I'm going to be pounding the desk over this, and I'm going to be congratulating them profusely over this, because I really, really want this. And once they get the back end support in, okay, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. So in this system, they're talking about player-driven ranks, meaning, you know how the rank system in the game is pretty much useless now. You can't rank up on your own. You need commands, blah, 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 all of that stuff. Well, in the hierarchical organization or the player group, you will have ranks assigned to you based on your usefulness in the group or the organization. You understand? And permissions will be granted within the organization. So say when that back end support comes in, remember what I was talking about in the last podcast about the leader being one of the only ones capable of clan locking a storage container for the clan? Well, permissions of just using that as an example, may be granted to one of the other higher members for recruitment into the organization, or, whatever functions that will be coded in later for the backline. The permissions are going to be directly tied to that. So, well done, devs. Well done. I mean, oh my goodness. I don't want to clap too loud, because I don't know how that's going to come through on the mic here, but I am so happy for that. I am very happy for that. Thank you. We needed this. We need it. You understand? We need this. And they were all, they were saying that they're listening to us. They're hearing us. It's harder to plan these large scale these large scale operations without an actual player group or hierarchy, right? people are kind of wandering around, don't really know what to do. They're trying their best, but there just isn't that official structure here. And that's what we're getting. That's what we want. And I'm happy to have it. I'm happy. I'm looking so forward to update 27 because of that. Let's move on into this. All right. The recruitment side of the organization, the player grouping. The recruitment side of it will be on a request system, meaning you can't just walk in and join and become leader, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work that way. Once an organization is established, there's a system in place that allows players to request to join the organization, which I'm guessing more and more friendlies will want to allow you to do that, especially if they want their organization to function well. You're going to want to get more players in, get them trained up as to what you want them to do within the organization or what they're willing to do within the organization, learn their strengths and then put them to work within the organization. Example. If you're a Logi player and you don't have much time to play at all, you got like 2 hours a day, something like that. And that 2 hours is split up into do multiple sections of the day, well, we got a job for you. We're going to always need salvage, right? We're going to always need that. But see, here's the thing. We don't want you to turn all that salvage into a bunch of fuel and stuff. No. That's going to better be served as EMAT and BMAT. So while you're on for that 2 hours, hey, why don't you produce a bunch of BMAT for us? We could really use that. We're gonna really need that. And once you've made your quota for that day, we'll have somebody logging all of that. And then, hey, look, you could move up in the organization if you go over your quota. You understand? So say, just as an example, if we need about 15,000 BMATs, and not only did you bring in that 15,000, say you brought in 20,000, and on top of that, we requested 10,000 EMAT from you, but you brought in 15,000 EMAT on top of it. I mean, you're a heavy hitter. You did all that in 2 hours? You're a heavy hitter. We need to make this guy priority. You know what I mean? He's bringing in the big numbers. We need to make this guy a larger part of the team. You get what I'm saying? So that's what I am so happy for that. It's such a rewarding system to have in place. And again, I want to make sure I stress this. We're throwing that word clan right out the window. Never going to use it again. All right. Anybody brings it up, toss it out the window. We're talking about player grouping in the hierarchy system. You know what I mean? Hierarchical organizations. All right. So if that's the game they want to play, they want to use those words. Fine. I'm playing. I'm all in. You know what I mean? Let's play ball. Let's get it done. Now, another beautiful thing about this system. This one came from HB. HB brought up that not only are, the big organizations, the big guys who are already known and, have their own foundation in the game so far going to benefit from this system. But think of all the new guys that are coming in that are still learning what to do and may be intimidated by some of the requirements requested of them from the larger organization. They might hear 15,000 BMATs. My God, it'll take me all year to make that. So they just want to sort of start small until they get their feeling into the game. That's totally fine because the system is going to be implemented in such a way to allow for individuals to engage in the same manner. So you can come in and say there's a small guy running around. He's got his own organization going on. And you don't want to be, sort of scared off with those huge numbers being requested from you. So this guy, he going, look, man, I mean, if you just want to run some Logi and serve the front line in this area, that's cool. You can join up with me. I've got my own organization going on. And truthfully, I don't even have a quota for you. I mean, just bring in what you can. You know what I mean? Just do what you can. And you can join that organization. So it doesn't have to be the major groups out there. You can join one of the smaller ones. And anybody will be able to do this kind of thing to help everyone. Big and small groups will benefit from this. And it's wonderful. I love it. I love it. I'm telling you, we're going to go so much further with this. And I'm happy for it. I'm going to be in the forums. I'm going to be on the Discord, just pounding the pavement on this thing, trying to drive it as close to home as possible. So let's go ahead and move right on in. Mark brought up later on more lore for the game. And he gave it an interesting title. It's called The Chronicle of Ashes. And it's supposed to be more of a external game lore. So not an official lore that you can actually research and help play in the game. So to, bend your play style to this official lore, if you will. It's going to be more aligned with player stories. So like me, I have tons of player stories. I've been playing this game for a while now, a few years, and I've got tons of stories of the things that have happened in game, and I'll be glad to share them with you. And so say for instance, as I'm sharing these stories with you in future podcasts, those type of stories is what he's talking about, where they could take these stories, if they're formatted properly, that is, and introduce them in this external way to help players who want more of that lore. More, every game needs a good bit of lore to give it sort of structure, both internal and external lore. So I think that's a very big community thing, and I like that they're actually doing it. That's great. I'm going to definitely be putting a storytelling section into my podcast a little bit later on down the line. First, I want to make sure I structure it all properly and make it entertaining for you. And then, we'll start implementing some of that, and I'll get some feedback from you on some of the things you want to hear. Some other stories that things that I've done. These are what these stories are going to be built on. So we'll definitely get into that. All right, let's move right on in. From the Q&A section of the dev blog, they were talking about the operations and Operation Stockpile. Will the operations change because of the new Operation Stockpile feature that's supposed to be implemented? Now, the Operation Stockpile, let's start with operations first. We all know about operations, right? Being able to create an operation and communicate with everyone. I've shown how to do that in, I think it was episode 6 of my Foxhole series. That's not going to change. You'll still be able to do your regular operations. Operation Stockpile, however, will be slightly different, and I'm not a big fan of it because I think it's a step in the right direction, but they're stopping short of the full feature, the big thing. They're stopping so short of it, and it's going to kind of go into something that comes up a little bit later on. It's going to tie into a thing. I'll talk about it a little bit more later on, but for now, let's just call it magic. They don't want the game to have like this sort of magical thing that just sort of happens, and it's kind of like, hey, that's not really what's the term, anachronistic. It's not viable to that time period, if you will. So they're kind of not really sure how they want to implement it, but for now, the Operation Stockpile is supposed to be this thing where you create the stockpile in the world. It's an Operation Stockpile. All the players will see it visually on the map that this Operation Stockpile exists. There will be a description for it as to what kind of items are requested for the Operation Stockpile. And then, Logi players can supply those items like vehicles, weapons, ammunition, things like that for an upcoming operation. So say, for instance, you'll be able to set the Operation Stockpile for 48 hours from now. Meaning in 48 hours from now, the moment of creation, this thing will become open. And when it's open, all of the resources that have been submitted to it are now able to be withdrawn and used, hopefully for the purpose of the operation. And see, that's where I'm a little upset about it. You're drawing in too much attention on it, for one. I know we want everybody to participate and be a big part of this thing, but truthfully, when you put a big beacon up in the world that says, hey, free stuff over here, we already got enough thievery going on. It's just going to bring more and more thieves to it that are going to say, oh, well, I want a tank to go do my own thing. I'm not even going to participate in the operation. I just know that tanks are being deposited into that Operation Stockpile. Therefore, I'm just going to come and take one. And I'm going to take some shells while I'm at it. And I'm going to take some fuel while I'm at it. And why not some bullets and other things? You get what I'm saying? So that's what I'm a little worried about. People are going to abuse it like everything else. It's not going to be locked like how in episode 1 I discussed the clan locking feature, and I had to use the word, that nasty C word there just now, just to kind of, because I talked about it in episode 1. But I'll switch that to operation locking or group locking. Group locking. There you go. So, I wish it had more of a group-oriented feel to it, where group members will be able to withdraw from this. Group members will be able to submit to this and have it to where once it's open, 48 hours from now, when we're ready to start the operation, the group can then come together, use the resources, and pull off this massive operation that's just going to be epic. I want that to be the case, and I want there to be more of a group personal or a group possession to it. You know what I mean? Not this open to everyone at all times, because again, thieves are going to show up and just take what they want. I believe it's going to fail. I hope that it doesn't. I hope that it's very rewarding to the developers. But I mean, after playing the game for so many years, you just know. You just know. Later on, Mark also talked about the tech tree. This was big. They talked about completely overhauling the tech tree system. And he said that they want to do this because it's too linear. Meaning there's this line that you have to follow. You have to get item A before you can go to item B, and then item B before you can go to item C. And at some point in the tech tree, maybe you can branch between, E, D, and F in a different order, but it is very much linear. And they were saying that, not only that, but it does have that magical feel to it. Like all the town halls in the game have Wi-Fi installed. So therefore they're all linked via Wi-Fi. There's no player interaction to link them. It's just magically done. So they're going to revamp it all to kind of cover those bases to, I guess, give it a more player-driven feel. Something like Logi. Picture how Logi has to make the raw material into refined material, and then make that into weapons, ammunitions, and tools, and then transport that to a front line. Well, I'm guessing the changes for the tech tree and, the visuals of it, being able to understand what's next on the list and what's being, invested in and what's not, that's going to have to be more player driven. So I'm excited about that too. I'm not as excited as the organizations but it's still exciting. I'm happy to have it. The overhauling of the tech tree, though, here's something we really need to focus on. He was saying that the overhaul process is going to allow players to make very big changes. So say, for instance, you're going to be at the beginning of the war, and maybe, this is just an example, of course. Maybe you don't want to go from metal coal and, revolvers and carbines, the basic stuff that you're going to want in the start of a war to help you progress early game. Maybe you're that big organization that focuses on the vehicle combat. Maybe you're going to want to skip all of that and get straight to work on battle tanks. Now, that may not be a good idea to do because you're going to need a lot of those early game resources to progress up to battle tanks, but it'll allow you to diversify nonetheless and then go for that battle tank early. Oh my God, that's going to be big. So again, you may make a mistake in doing so. By trying to invest in that late game item too early, you may cut your own throat. But that's a decision the players will have to make. And I am very happy for that. Because think about it. Maybe your team's a little gun-ho. Maybe they really want to get battle tanks day 3 or 4 in the war. Maybe, it sounds crazy, but I mean, I'd like to see what happens if they attempt it. Now, of course, your team's going to have very little other resources, but you'll have a battle tank, right? So I think that's going to be very interesting to see, and I'm happy that they're opening up more to the players, to the community. We'll be able to organize and just make the game our own, and I love that. That's great. Matt discussed later on about the game origin, more of the lore, and I guess it was a question about why they have so much Irish or Celtic lore infused into the game instead of other lore. And he said it's more of his background, Matt's background, and he wanted to see more of that in. So whenever he gets the chance, he tries to implement as much as he can. HB chimed in a little later on and started talking about, I guess, his origin, the South American origin. And he was saying that how in other games, whenever they include something about South America, they always go toward, the drug cartels, these big groups that sell a bunch of drugs and kill people, and they never touch on the other areas of South American culture. And that's the kind of things that, he hope to see in a future DLC. Now, again, this is all speculation. It's just talk. There's no actual official discussion of Foxhole DLC or anything of that nature. This is just talk, but it's coming from the developers, which is very important. And I believe that if the players definitely say, "Hey, we want to see some jungle warfare," I think they're on the boat with that. You get what I'm saying? I think they're ready to go with that. Now, again, I'm with HB and Matt. I want to see some diversity in the lore. I don't really care too much about the whole drug dealer, drug cartel thing. I don't think it'll fit into the game very well, but if they threw some of it in there, I guess it could kind of fit with the whole, those little boats that we use, the little motor boats that we use. I guess it can kind of fit with that theme in there, but I really don't care if it's in there at all. Matt later on talked about the World War II perspective of the game. He once again shared this with everybody. And again, guys, the game is not chronologically built around World War II. The only thing in the game that, is more specific to World War II are the weapons and tools, not the actual world and concept of the game. The lore has absolutely nothing to do with World War II. So just to put that out there, when people keep, mentioning World War II when talking about the game, they specifically talk about this in the video, and that's around minute 48, 56 seconds. That's where they start to talk about that, where Matt discusses it. He later on talks about, this was Mark talking about this next one. Mark was talking about dismantling of friendly structures. Now, if you're a builder, if you're a Logi, you love this. He wants to implement a way for friendlies to get rid of that clutter that gets built in the middle of the roads. But here's the problem. You have to first figure out what's considered griefing. Because it's easy to code this in, right? To be able to make an object that allows you to dismantle something. Or maybe you don't even have to make a specific object. You can just use your same hammer, right? Like they could just add a function onto it where when you go up to an object that's already built in the world, you can then, use your hammer and click on it and instead of building it, dismantle it. Maybe even get some of the resources back from it, right? And he was saying that, some defenses are built properly and you don't want some new player or a griefer, some spy, some troll to come in and just start tearing up all these properly placed defenses just so he can screw your whole team over, sabotage your whole team over this. So that's where they want to kind of figure out the balance of it, figure out exactly what do they define as griefing. So when it's done, they can label it and, just nip it in the bud right then and there. But they're saying that they want to implement something like this because, of course, people are asking for it. People like me, you're driving down the road, you're doing Logi, and there's just tons of stuff built in the middle of the road, FOBs and gun turrets and all this nonsense just built in the middle of the road. And it's like, it's so hard not to swear when you think about it. Just, and I get it. Sometimes it's new players, they don't really know, but other times it's players who've been playing for a while and they, for some reason, don't understand that elevation matters in the game. Like, say, for instance, when you're coming off of a bridge and there's a slight dip in the road as you come off the bridge, don't build a gate in that dip. The truck will get stuck there. Go a little further up the road and then construct a gate up there where the road levels off. That way the truck can build up momentum. Because remember, there is no real physics in the game. Like, you can't just, once the truck gets stuck, man, it's hard to get that joker unstuck. And do you really want to run back to town, go get a crane, have to package up your you get what I'm saying? You really want to have to go through all of that? No, nobody wants to have to go through all that. We just want more educated players to build properly. But until then, this dismantling of friendly structures is very important. Mark, you get to work on that, and you get to work on that fast, right after player groups. Right after the grouping system, and you get all the grouping stuff implemented. You can even hold off on the whole posting thing. We'll deal with the posts that we got right now. But get that hierarchy system into place along with the player groups. Give us some more of that backline flexibility like I discussed in episode 1 of the podcast. And in the friendly structure dismantling. And we can go from there. I'll be willing to make videos every other day if I have to possibly, educate players on how to properly do this thing and show them the kind of problems that happen when you don't do it correctly. So I'm very happy that the developers are on board now, that they throw out that nasty C word. I'm just going to whisper it real close. I'm going to say it real close. Don't let the developers know when I'm saying it. All right. Clans. Don't use that word. All right. So we want to talk about the player groups, the hierarchical system. That's what we want. We want that big time. Pound the desk. Get it in. And then we're going to go forward from there. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I'm Young Lion. I'm out. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about these new changes, what you think about the podcast, especially for the lore and the stories later on. Yeah, let me know. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.